Okay, welcome everyone back to the Walking with Jaguars podcast. Back after a bit of a hiatus, took a month off to just go to Peru and switch up my life a little bit, but we're back today with Riki. And he's a father, he's a hardcore Bitcoiner from Queenstown, New Zealand. He's out there building the Bitcoin Basin, which is a peer-to-peer community, which I'd also love to dive into today. Um, any other hats you like to wear?
Yeah, I mean, I run a construction company, or I own my own construction company here, and one of my long-term aim is to be a Bitcoin, backed business, if you like. So I'm into a development at the moment, a small two townhouse development, and the front end costs of that, like the soft costs, is your architectural fees and consultant fees, and that are all being funded by Bitcoin. And the strategy there is to do property or real estate developments with my building company, and then all the profits that I make from that will go back into my Bitcoin hodl for the longer term. So that's something that I'm working on at the moment as well.
Yeah, unreal. Yeah. I mean, right now, like Bitcoin's like down pretty far, and the the wallets are looking a little slim, but when you have income in Bitcoin, it's fucking awesome, right? Because it's like double pay.
Well, that's it. I mean, I actually pay a couple of my guys in Bitcoin, a portion of that. So I'm really lucky that I've got some of the guys on my team understand what we're trying to do here as well. So I've not earned Bitcoin yet. There's not many people out there willing to pay Bitcoin to build a house, but who knows?
Time will tell. It'll come eventually, but it's a long way out.
Especially at the moment, with the price, because all the fiat junkies and that, they don't understand Bitcoin. So I've been getting, you'll probably be the same when Bitcoin's pumping, you get all these messages from your mates going, "Oh wow, how good's this?" And then when it's going down, I had one the other day. A mate goes, "Oh, what's up with Bitcoin? It's crashed," as if it's my fault or something. I'm like, mate, this thing always does this, always will do this. Just hang in there.
Oh, yeah. The price doesn't even really change how I feel at all anymore.
Nah. But I think that's the thing. People don't realize, right? Nothing changes from the Bitcoin side of things, right? TikTok, next block, 21 million. It just, that never changes. What changes is obviously the volatility and the dollar denominated value. And that's what people that don't understand Bitcoin, that's all their focus is on.
Mhm, mhm. And I mean, there's big games I think that are being played right now with the market too. Like just what was it, like a year ago or 2 years ago, you have BlackRock do a massive investigation into like how you should diversify your assets. And they like publicly released that 90% of all your assets should be in Bitcoin. And now they're running the ETF and like they want to get in and all this. So I think there's some big games being played like when it comes to like the dollar amount.
Well, I don't even see what they do as Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin exposure. They're the ones that hold the Bitcoin. Anyone that's investing in that, you don't have Bitcoin, bro. You need to have that in self custody. It's there's only one way to have Bitcoin, and that's in your own self custody. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, not your keys, not your Bitcoin.
That's right, man. I mean, it's all garbage. Bro, I don't even know, like, sailors buying all this Bitcoin, but there's no proof of reserves. Like, are they even doing that? Like, because he's saying he's loading up, he's buying billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, yet the price goes down. I mean, I don't really care. Like, it is what it is, but I just feel like there's a whole bunch of garbage around who's buying Bitcoin, who's holding what. It just doesn't make sense to me, eh?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. I remember having this conversation with my buddy like a couple months ago talking about Sailor. Because Sailor's like, he came in the space and he like talks relatively elegantly about these things. But like the mission of Bitcoin is to have everyone like hold their keys. And now he's just making like a bunch of different like companies that are publicly traded so that people can get exposure in different ways. And I think he's just kind of playing pyramid bullshit games a little bit.
I mean, he's an expert in that field, or is he? I mean, he's the perception is that he knows that side of finance and whatever you like. He's using Bitcoin as that tool. But again, bro, if you don't hold Bitcoin in your self custody, you don't have Bitcoin. That's the reality, you know. And it's not for me.
Yeah, and we met at Bitcoin Las Vegas
Yeah. What?
last year, and I remember just like I'd never gone to any conferences or anything like that at all. Like I just everything I learned was just like books and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. And going out there and seeing people react to Sailor coming on stage, just like, it's like, what the fuck is going on?
Mad, eh? I mean, it's so crazy. Like, I love that conference, bro. Like, a lot of people, you know, it's again because I'm the self custody guy, and so it's not. You can see why people would be turned off by that, but we wanted to go and just experience it, and I'm so glad we did because, yeah, they had all the, you know, the administration guys there wanking on and lots of shit coining and all this sort of stuff there. But there were a lot of good people there. Obviously, we got to meet you, and I'm. It was the second day, I think, of the conference where I figured out what you're actually supposed to do there, and those breakout areas, just talking to random people, that was the real key to that conference. Was, man, I met some out of it people. Like, um, you know, and Americans just don't muck around, right? Like their whole mindset around, you know, I'm basically a farmer from the little country in the bottom of the world, you know, like New Zealand, where these guys are serious, sort of, particularly like in the mining space. I just blow my mind. I didn't even know that mining was as big as it was, right? That was a massive part of that conference, eh?
Yeah, I remember I was in a booth there with the company that I work for, and like two booths down was it Shell? I think it might have been Shell with their like new immersion mining setup. You know, just like a bunch of dudes in suits and like no one talking to them. I was like, holy shit, there's like big players here.
Dude, what about that Chinese one that was there? And it was like a whole city, like with Bitcoin mining, which was then, you know, they were using all the, you know, the heat and whatnot to bloody basically power up this whole town. It was just like, whoa, mind blowing stuff, right?
Yeah, I know there's a company called like Mint Green out in Vancouver, and they do that. They have like a massive mining operation and they pump all the excess heat into like the centralized system of the city to like heat homes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, bro, there's so many, you know, we have a lot of hydroelectricity here in New Zealand, right? And it's, one of the big plants that we've got is, West Arm, you won't know. It's in the bottom of Fiordland, so really remote. And that was set up to power this aluminium smelter that's down in the bottom of New Zealand. And, you know, my thought, like the thing with hydroelectricity is that, you know, where this power station is located is miles from anywhere, right? So then they run lines all the way down to this aluminium smelter, which isn't profitable, by the way. It's just an initiative to employ the people down there. Pretty much, it's never made any money. And then my thought is like, imagine if they were Bitcoin mining, you know, because then obviously you're mining Bitcoin at the source, which then you're creating Bitcoin, and then you're able to send it wherever, you know, and that could go into your public infrastructure, and we'd all be, you know, that this is just my, um, you know, dream, if you like, but it would never happen because that's just the system's not set up that way, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, I know like out in El Salvador, they're like putting together Bitcoin mining rigs that are like going into the volcanoes to use the heat to, you know, do like thermal exchange and run the miners. So like they're going, you know, but I think the West is just not going to adopt this at all.
I was about to say, mate, it's the West, you know, like that. You won't even. So when you spoke to Nell, I don't know if she mentioned that we went to Parliament, right? So our Parliament to talk about Bitcoin. There was a entourage of us that went there, you know, to speak to the government, like so the National Party. So we've got a coalition government, I think, same as Australia, and there's three parties that make up our government, if you like, and they all came to the Parliament to hear one of the guys talk about Bitcoin, and there's a whole entourage of us. And what really shocked me is that nobody in there knew anything about Bitcoin. And aside, just to add to that, we'd just been in Vegas, right? So this was sort of April, May, June, I suppose. And what blew me away is that, like Trump you remember he was campaigning on Bitcoin, right? David Sachs, this whole Bitcoin friendly administration. And these guys that are actually in Parliament in New Zealand had no clue about Bitcoin, which was strange to me, being that you would think that you'd be keeping an ear on the ground as to what the American government's doing, right? Especially if you're in government yourself. They knew nothing. It was pretty pretty wild, actually.
Uh-huh. And like, how did they take to you guys talking about it?
They loved it. So, I mean, I didn't say anything. I was just tagging along, basically. But um, so the way it works is we had a room. It was the caucus room of the National Party, and I want to say there was probably 30, maybe 35 MPs showed up, and they all stayed for ages. Like typically, they'll go to something like that, they'll eat the food, and then they'll leave. If it's not interesting. But there was a lot of genuine interest there. But I've got so we've got a thing called the Bitcoin Policy Institute in New Zealand, which is, I think they've got them in America and parts of the world where they are looking or advocating for Bitcoin to governments. And again, this is just that water and oil kind of thing. Bitcoin's not for central government, right? This is what separates the money from the state. So I support these guys for what they're doing, but I can't see a time where a government who's got access to their own money machine, right? So we have the Reserve Bank here in New Zealand. So the government basically has control of that. Why would they embrace something that's completely decentralized that they don't have any control over? It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Everyone's running accounts, and it's like they have no access to them through the banks. You can't freeze anyone, you can't tax anyone, you know? Like, they'll never bring that in.
Have you read The Creature from Jekyll Island?
No, I haven't.
You've probably heard of it, mate. It's compulsory reading. I mean, it's a big book, and it's basically about the creation of the Federal Reserve. And you read that book, mate, and then you realize how dark the Federal Reserve and the US dollar and everything connected to it. The IMF and the World Bank and all these other organizations. Like these people or these organizations, if you like, have got these guys create misery all over the world. They've been responsible for wars, proxy wars, deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. This is since the creation of the Federal Reserve. These guys aren't going to just roll over and allow Bitcoin just to come in and take over. That's not to say that Bitcoin can't. I'm after reading that book, I'm sort of thinking if Bitcoin was to take over, become a reserve asset of the world, it probably wouldn't happen in my lifetime. I don't think. I'm still hopeful, but when you understand how insidious these organizations are and the lengths that they're willing to go to maintain control of different countries and just our whole money system, it'd be very difficult to see Bitcoin being a big player anytime soon.
I know, like, me based in Costa Rica and like a little bit of the history here. It was like they got their first huge loan from the IMF, right? And like Latin America isn't set up economically, like the rest of the world, especially not, 50, 100 years ago. So they give this massive loan to Costa Rica, and then Costa Rica can't pay it back. So then they go, okay, we're going to send in a whole bunch of people to like fix your economy and basically like make all the like slave export, pay people nothing of bananas and everything to the US. And then like people, there was like assassinations that were happening for people who like weren't taking place, and then like even down in Colombia something similar happened, and it was like the United Fruit Company, like all these people went on strike down there because they were basically being forced to work because the government had to pay back these loans, and they all striked, and then it didn't resolve, so they just went in and just killed everyone and just reset, like full massacre, And this is only what? This was like I think in the 40s, uh, you know?
It's dark, bro. It's so dark. And this is the thing with the IMF, right? So to your point, they do exactly that. Come in, we'll bail you out. And this is the same. Even they've done it. They do it in America. Like, the Federal Reserve will loan money, to these countries. Oh, sorry, the IMF or whatever. They know they can't pay it back. All they're interested in, they don't really care about the principal so much. It's the interest payments. That's the thing that they care about. So they lend X amount of millions or billions. They can't make the payments. That's okay. We'll give you more money so you can keep paying us our interest payments. And then they get even more in trouble until sometime then they start giving away their sovereignty. That's what happens in these countries where they'll give away, whatever it is, gas reserves, oil reserves, anything to sort of try and stay above water, but it's a lose-lose situation. The IMF knows that. I mean, they're not in the business of helping people out. They're there to basically bleed these countries dry. It's sick actually.
It is. And like thank God for Bitcoin, but man, like you said, like it's gonna be some time, you know? Like I don't see any of this kind of working out towards like a, Bitcoin standard across the world until the dollar fails and my God, they're gonna squeeze, you know?
Well, the thing is, these people that are trying to make it work from a governmental level from the top down, and it needs to be the bottom up, and that's really what Bitcoin is, right? So, you know, piece by piece, person by person, just acquiring Bitcoin. I love using Bitcoin, right? Like, I will spend a Bitcoin. I have some hard sort of caveats to that. So we have merchants here because of the Bitcoin basin, but if those merchants aren't, and this is just my own personal thing, some people have different view because I've actually had some big debates with some other Bitcoiners as well, that if I give that merchant Bitcoin, I need to know that they're going to hold it or spend it somewhere else. If they're just going to turn it back into cuck bucks or whatever, then I'll just give them dollars. You know what I mean? Because clearly they don't understand the value of Bitcoin. That's just how I work. So it's just going to take time. I mean, I've got a mate now who's only new to the space and he gets it, right? And he's a little bit like when I first got into Bitcoin around 2020, 2021, like I didn't see a profit for like 2 years because I just rode that sucker all the way down. You get enticed by the all-time high, right? Think, oh, I better get in. You start doing your learning, and some of us stick at it and learn, and then just write it down, and then we'll come out the other end. And he's going through his first cycle, so he's still very convicted, and he's not going to stop. But yeah, he's hasn't seen a profit, and he probably won't for another, God knows, maybe another year or so. Who knows?
But that's exactly it, right? It's like I don't see a profit for a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, but like you play this thing over 20, 50 years, there's like zero doubt in my mind, you know? Even if everything goes to shit and they make Bitcoin illegal and they start fucking dropping predator missiles on Bitcoin mining operations, it's like it doesn't matter, you know?
It really they've tried to kill this thing so many times, and that's what, again, the normies, if you like, don't understand. They always think that there's this, the CIA created it, and there's these back doors, and that's just going to get rug pulled. And it's like, bro, you don't understand how that. I'm lucky. I know a couple of computer scientists here that have very switched on, been in Bitcoin a long time. So I've asked all those questions, right? And you probably know this, but there's all these computer nerds that have just tried to bend and break this thing to see how it works, and can't be done. So far, so good.
I mean, I think the whole network right now is sitting at like around a trillion. Like, if you can break the network, there's $1 trillion reward. You know, people are trying every day. It's like this thing works. You know.
Well, I mean, you can see it from the government. Like, bro, if the government, the US government could control this thing, it would be gone tomorrow. You know what I mean? They would have it. Um, yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, crazy world. Okay, I think we just like when we touched on it, but what drew you into Bitcoin in the beginning, and like what was that journey like of diving down the rabbit hole?
Bro, COVID really was the catalyst. I even hate that word now, but you know, Were you in Australia at the time when that was going down?
I was in Canada.
Okay. Well, that was pretty gnarly by all accounts. But we were going into lockdown, and this is that whole my introduction to we're in a fucking matrix here, because as that thing started to happen, right? Like I actually took it quite serious initially. I thought, oh, this is scary. Like what is going on? I didn't know much about it. Saw things that were happening online, but worked out pretty quickly that, man, this feels real scammy. Like this doesn't line up, what you're being told. And so there was that. And then they started before the lockdowns. There's a few moments. I was going to jiu-jitsu one night and I drove past a big supermarket, and they'd been doing a big drive for people. Remember getting tested, like you feel fine, but just be tested. Maybe you've got COVID. And I remember thinking, fuck, who's going to do that? Like, bro, no one's going to do that. And I shoot you not, mate. I was driving to the gym, and this massive supermarket car park, there were cars lined up for miles. And I thought, oh my God, what is going on? And I knew it was a scam then. And then the other one was when the vaccine came to New Zealand, which was way after everyone else had it. And, I thought enough people knew that didn't really do much at that point. But anyway, same deal. I thought, no one's going to get that. No one's going to line up for that. Same deal. There were cars lined up for miles, bro. And again, that actually freaked me out, because I thought, oh my God, what is going on? And anyway, we went through a lockdown. And I think we had about 8 or 9 staff at the time, and, had a Zoom meeting much like this, like everyone else did. And we were having this thing like, okay, guys, we're going into lockdown for 4 weeks or whatever, be cool. Like everything's fine. And they were all laughing. They just thought they were going on holiday. Whereas I never saw it that way. I just thought the government, bro, is forcing us to stay at home with our hand out. And I didn't like that for 1 second. And once I started learning about Bitcoin, I was like, I never, because we knew people that were leaving the country, right? They had money that we didn't have any liquid money, basically. Like I had my business, and everything that we owned and had was tied up. There was no liquid money, really, not enough to leave the country. And so we had friends that were able to leave. They went to Mexico and had a good old time over there. And I just said to myself, never again. And that was really the catalyst, bro, is to really diving into Bitcoin. And but then again, getting into Bitcoin, I didn't understand it, obviously, at the start. And it was just as we went on this journey, most like a lot of other people, you start realizing, it's different. It's not just some sort of crypto money. There's so much more to it than that.
Mm-hmm. It like completely reorients your entire life, and you get major discernment, of like, you look at the world and you're like, I don't know, I think the matrix kind of fucked, but like you can't quite put your finger on it. And then once you realize like the money is just completely broken, you're like, oh man, this goes so deep.
I always thought I knew I had a base knowledge of finance, because I'd always been into investing and I had a business and that, and I thought I knew what money was. And the real answer is I just didn't. I understood the terms like interest rates. I knew what they were. I knew the terminology inflation, but I didn't really know what it was. I just thought I knew, like a lot of people think they know. Oh, inflation's running at 3.2%. That seems like it's okay. And then real early on, Nell bought me the Bitcoin standard straight out the gate, which is kind of strange. Like she knew nothing about it. This is my wife, she knew nothing about it, but thought, oh, he's getting into this. So she bought the Bitcoin standard for me, and I didn't really sit down and read it cover to cover, but I was just sort of flicking through it. And I'm not sure if it was in the Bitcoin standard, but there's some, what is money, right? The question, what is money? Bro, that was a real orange pilling moment for me, because I was like, I didn't know what money was, right? I didn't know where money come from. I didn't know what it was. We all have this perception that we understand what money is, but we don't know how it's created. We don't know who controls it. We didn't. And so that just opens up your world, and you start digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And my understanding of macroeconomics and things like that is way deeper than it was. In fact, I would have thought economics was the most boring subject in the world, but turns out it's something I'm quite passionate about now.
Well, I think it is, right? Like when you're looking at all the Keynesian economic stuff, it's all just like jargon bullshit, and there is no meaning to it. But then once you find like Bitcoin and Austrian economics, you're like, oh man, this is juicy stuff.
Yeah, 100%, bro. And that this idea around centralization, because that was another thing I didn't understand about Bitcoin at the start, was the decentralization. I didn't really understand that concept. It sort of came a little bit later. But so before that, I had no concept of what centralized government was, or central banking, and this idea that you know our money, for example, should be centralized, and there's only a select few people that you know have the control it basically, and decide who gets it and what interest rate they're going to pay. And it's this you know what's Carlin say, it's one big club and you ain't in it. And you've got to recognize that we are the bottom feeders, or the whatever they want to call us. We don't live in the way that the elites do, right? We don't have access to the capital that they do. We pay more for it. We're getting fisted by the tax department. um, and now you just look at the cost of living because of COVID and the excessive money printing. I'm not sure what the cost of living is like where you are, but I mean, you'll know Australia's looking crazy. New Zealand's, anywhere in the West, I feel is we're in the end of days, bro. It's just getting more and more expensive, and it's kind of concerning, eh?
Yeah. I mean, Costa Rica is definitely a little bit cheaper, like especially for like rent and produce and stuff like that. But when it comes to anything imported, it's almost the same price. So as long as you like live kind of like a local, you can live relatively cheap. But my best buddy, his brother just came out for a couple months, kind of just get some codes off me and my buddy about how to live a good life and you know all that stuff. And I was just showing him around my place. And I mean, like, it's not like a crazy place, but like I pay like 1,000 US for this a month. And it's like 3 bedrooms. And it's like it's a big place, it's nice. And my buddy's brother is like walking around and I could see his brain like turning over. He was like, wait, I'm actually so fucking confused because I pay more than you for a room in Sydney.
It's very much like that here where we are in Queenstown, bro. It's like $1,000 a week for a house, and more, for a basic house. And you know, I just don't know how people afford that. I feel fortunate. I've got my own business, so I guess my income a little bit higher than most people. But for people on fixed incomes, this is the other part of the psyop, right? Like you cannot get ahead. You cannot open your mind. You cannot raise your consciousness when all you're worrying about is how you're going to feed your family and pay your bills, and basically never get anywhere, because the system is rigged, that's for sure. And, you don't have the time, like, for example, it's the middle of the day. I can be on this podcast with you. I can choose to have some type of, freedom, if you like. Um, but sadly, most people are not able to do that now. And then, of course, you've got, daycare fees and everything else that goes into, you know, living. Food is really expensive here in New Zealand, which is crazy considering we're a food producing country, right? We export most of our food, so yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's like for me, like a huge reason why I've like moved to Latin America and like stationed myself here. And I'm going to move to Peru in like a month from now. And, like I don't make like a ridiculous amount of money, but like my money is all made online. Right. So I'm not location dependent at all. And like even on what I've made now, it's like I've retired my partner, you know, because like we're good. Like the cost of living is low, and especially as like someone who's like entrepreneurial and like creative and has passions and like wants to explore different ways of generating income. I always tell people like if you're like living in Sydney, it's so hard to make it work because you have that like push on you all the time to like just pay the next month off. Whereas like you move to Peru, you're like living in a nice place and like you have all the groceries you could ever need and you're paying like, 600 US a month for all of it. And it's like if you want to go big on business and be an entrepreneur, it's like you have to give yourself a little bit of like leeway to fail and learn and like pay the tuitions and, you know.
That was the thing that stuck out for me when we met you in Vegas, actually, bro. Was like when you said, "Oh, I live in Costa Rica," and that I just thought that was so cool. Like, actually, I was like, "Dude, this guy's onto it," because a lot of people, well, most people, I guess, we just get stuck in this again, this system, the matrix of. A lot of people wouldn't think that that was possible. Actually, that you can just do that. Um, so yeah, that was pretty cool, actually.
No, I appreciate that. And I mean, like that's the thing. Like it's actually not that hard to do. Like in all honesty, like I went through the ringer to try and work it out because I had no idea what I was doing. But like with a little bit of guidance, you can actually put it together pretty quickly. Especially when your cost of living is like nothing.
Mate, I believe that to be true. Like our son, he's only 6, but we're homeschooling him now, and that was again this whole thing where you go, oh man. When Nell first mentioned it to me about homeschooling, I was like, man, you're crazy. What are you talking about? That's just because that's even though I feel consider myself to be awake, there's still parts to your psychology that is still asleep. You know what I mean? And now I'm just like, I can't believe anyone goes to school. The place is the system, the education system is garbage. And we thought all those things like, how are we going to do this? We're like, how's it going to work? Well, we're doing it now. And to your point, it's actually pretty easy, you know?
hmm You just have to choose. you know, that's really it. Yeah. Nice. So, are you involved in the Bitcoin basin, or is that more Nell's thing?
That's Nell's thing, dude. But I'm 100% supportive of it. We go to a lot of event. We'll basically go to any event in the country that is Bitcoin related, just to try and support the movement, if you like, because you can imagine it's very small here. Queenstown's, I guess, the thing that gives Queenstown the edge over the rest of the country is that the basin's funded, from a philanthropist. So that's what is allowing, Nell to basically be able to do this. And there's another guy that's going to be coming online shortly as well. Plus, we've got Lightning Pay. I don't know if you heard of that. Lightning Pay, that's basically a Bitcoin only exchange. And one of the founders is here. So I kind of consider Lightning Pay a Queenstown company as well. And just because Queenstown is kind of a beautiful, affluent kind of area, there are quite a lot of low key Bitcoiners that live here. So there's a real strong, um, you know, community of Bitcoiners. Just by, if you had, we know a lot of high net worth Bitcoiners now that they're real low key, like they don't want to be known or anything like that, which is fine. But it definitely attracts those guys. If you've got the means to live like that, guys that have been in Bitcoin a long time, and you want to live in New Zealand, well, Queenstown's probably going to be the place that you're going to want to live in. So that's sort of, and then we've got the benefit of having a number of merchants and that as well. So it's obviously quite hard at the moment when the price is down. That it doesn't exactly inspire people to get involved. But yeah, it's I support it for sure.
Yeah, unreal. Yeah, I mean, like, here in Costa Rica, I have it pretty sweet, right? Where like all the tech is all pretty good, and you can do like the Bitcoin to e-transfer type deals like really easily. So the vendor doesn't even need to accept Bitcoin, and you can use it. And then there's a lot of peer-to-peer stuff too. And now that I'm moving to Peru, I was like, holy fuck, my entire income basically is in Bitcoin. And it's like I need to create off ramps. So now, like, I'm planning on like, you know, the Sacred Valley just needs to have Bitcoin. And like I have more incentive than anyone else to like start onboarding vendors and everything. So like I'm gonna be on a mission, in a couple months here.
Oh, mate, you're doing God's work, brother. And so with the is there quite a lot of you can use Bitcoin quite a lot in Costa Rica? I mean, what's the vibe like there?
Yeah, I mean you can pretty much use it like everywhere more or less. So everyone has what's called SimPay here. And that's like, you just like hook up your bank account to accept e-transfers between each other, like Pay ID. I don't know what you have in New Zealand. And there's basically like a third party who does the exchange for you, and it's all non KYC. So you can pretty much use it everywhere other than like, Walmart and McDonald's and like those big international places. Cause like every little small business and mom and pop shop and people at the farmers market, they all just accept SimPay. So you have really easy rails there. And there's like a massive Bitcoin community here too, right? And they're all like, you go down to the Bitcoin jungle, that's what they call it, like Uvita, Dominical on the Pacific side of Costa Rica. And that's where like all the Yodas are. And it's the same stuff. It's like the people that have been in Bitcoin since they were mining on their laptops back in like 2012, and they all left the US and Canada during all the lockdowns because they were just like, fuck this. And they're all just sitting on Bitcoin and they're like, well, I want to use it. Right. So they just built all the tech and like the on ramps and off ramps to make it happen. So it's pretty legendary here.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Um, so is Peru more of a cash sort of based society, or what's the deal there?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure Peru is like 60% of the population still doesn't have a bank account.
Huh.
So it's like very much a cash society. Um, and I was down there for 3 weeks over like Christmas and New Year's. And I was kind of just going around and just like talking to a bunch of random people, like the place that sells like mapacho and whatnot. And everyone seems super interested. So, we'll see how we go.
Bro, I mean, that's perfect for a place like that, just it just takes a while for them to understand what's going on. But you said before, peer to peer, mate, that is the only way, because fuck the tax man in this country and any other country. We went from, here's the thing, like cash is kind of frowned upon now. And I don't use cash. I don't have cash. People just don't use it. And there's been a big push. I remember when it happened. So cashies, I don't know if you know that term for tradies and that, doing a cashies as opposed to sending invoices and putting it through the books. And that became such a naughty thing to do, right? Which is just bizarre to me, eh? But it shows you the psyop of the governments and the money system to gaslight us into thinking that we're doing something wrong. By, bro, if I do a job for you and we agree on a price and a methodology of how you're going to pay me and whatever you like, then who gives a fuck? Like the government should just do one, eh? Like what part have you actually played in this transaction aside from just trying to help yourself? And now with transaction fees and, I don't know if you have PayWave. We have PayWave, which is that tap type scenario. The cost of that alone is just, it's an extra 2% or something like that adds to the price of whatever you're buying. And, that money goes to that person and then they go spend it. So it's, you know the story. It's just getting clipped everywhere that dollar's being moved around. It's so peer to peer. I'm just 100% all about peer to peer. Definitely.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like when you actually start to think about just like how the taxation works, it just gets so crazy because they have the printer, right? So they're printing all the money. So then, like, what do they even need the tax for? It's actually just to destroy some of the money that they printed so inflation doesn't go crazy. And like you take a car, for example, it's like you buy a car, you pay tax, you sell a car, you pay tax, you buy gas, you pay tax, you like fix the mechanic, you pay tax. It's like the car might be worth like 30 grand, but over the span of its lifetime, it probably pays out like a quarter million in tax.
Yep. And it's all control, it's all because here's the thing, kind of to your point, the governments can just print money if they need to do public works or whatever they want to do. but it's taxing the because the money that the tax revenue that we generate is typically wasted, right? Like you'll see it in every government. It's wasteful spending. So whether it's some crappy initiative, like doesn't even matter what it is, it's always going to be wasteful, right? So the government will come up with an initiative. We had a howler here about 10 years ago where the government wanted to build all this housing, right? Because there was a lack of housing. So the government said, "Oh, we'll step in." They created this initiative called Kiwi Build, I think it was called, and they were saying we're going to build. I don't even remember the numbers. Call it a million. No, it must have been like 100,000 houses or something like this in a time frame, bro. They didn't even build 100. I could have my numbers wrong. They built nothing, and they blew through billions of dollars just to try and get this thing to happen. Then they just binned it. No accountability. No one loses their job. No one ends up in jail. No one even looks at where the money went. They just move on to the next, thing. And then meanwhile, the taxpayer, which is everybody, is just getting fisted and finding it difficult to, you know, have a general quality of life. It's insidious, bro. It's terrible.
Yeah, I remember when all this like the Bitcoin knowledge and everything started coming through, and I remember listening to Safer Dean's podcast, and he was talking about the Middle East, and there's like 10 countries that are still monarchs and 10 countries that are now democracies. And if you're raised in a democratic country, it's like democracy is the best thing ever. And then you look at them economically over the last 10 years, every monarch has been successful and every democracy has basically tanked. And I think you have these centralized parties coming in, like we talk about time preference in Bitcoin. And like if you're the monarch, like you want your, 7 generations ahead of you ancestors, like children, to still be in control. It's like still centralized, but you actually want the country to last. Whereas I think when we look at democracy and in the West, it's like you have these 4-year cycles. And it's like, how can I try to make the biggest splash possible and then potentially even fuck the person who takes over?
It's 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 all fake. Actually, the political industrial complex or whatever you want to call it is fake. This idea that I mean, see, I'm way past politics now, bro. Like, I used to take my vote very seriously back when I was asleep in the matrix. I thought it mattered. I thought whoever was in power could make some changes, could do some stuff. And to your point, you're exactly right. The time frames are too small, and everything's set up for the greater good. This kind of this socialist communist idea that you hear it all the time, where billionaires bad. I'm not. There are a lot of billionaires that are a bit suspect, but anyone that's got money needs to give it to everyone that hasn't done anything to this proof of work concept, right? And to your point about democracy is exactly right. I just want to I want a clear set of parameters or whatever you like. I can do whatever I want as long as I'm not hurting anybody else or causing any problem to anyone else. Let me live, stay out of my life, and just let the free market play out. But of course, the government doesn't want that because they want people to rely on them. They want to have, people that need their help, sort of thing. Because otherwise, what's their job? Like if they were all libertarian sort of people like us, we wouldn't need a government. Maybe just to like fix the roads or whatever, which they can't even do that.
Uh-huh. But I mean, people always manage themselves. You know what I mean? Like you go back to our distant ancestors living in tribal settings. They're still like the chief, and everyone's like, yeah, like he's really wise. Like I'm happy to take his lead on the small matters that concern our little world. But when you have these like massive federal, national level centralized parties, they just cannot do anything correctly. And it's like a brain power thing. It's like you have 200 people trying to judge the entire free market. It's impossible. And like you look at like why communism has always failed, and they do the same thing. It's like we got to take down the billionaires. Like you look at like the USSR. So they like take down all the rich and all the oligarchs and everything out there. But then they need another enemy. Now we go after the academics and you kill off all the academics, you know? And it's like just slowly but surely you just like destroy the entire proof of work system, you know? And then everything just falls out of balance.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. And this is where I'm at with politics, right? Like it's all fake because you look at it in the West. I mean, you can see it right now. There's no leadership, bro. Look at like Keir Starmer, freaking Albanese, Mark Carney. We've got, you know, probably don't know our Prime Minister, Chris Luxon. Bro, these are the beta-ish beta males you've ever seen in your life. These guys don't have any type of leadership. They're not people that you look up to. They're not people that you think this guy's going to take us forward. They are just weak little soy boy human beings, and that's by design because they're being controlled by the elites or people that we don't know, corporations, whatever. They only know that they're in there for a period of time. They're just going to line their pockets, and you know what is it with in America is real bad where they're on fairly, you know, modest incomes from the government, yet they all retire multi-gazillionaires. Like, how does that work? You know, it's pretty obvious.
Straight out of office, and then you're just like on the board of like 10 mining companies and oil companies and all this shit, you know? It's like, oh yeah, there was no handshaking that happened there.
Yep. I mean, yes. I mean, because there's a friend of mine used to be a leader of a party, a political party here in New Zealand years ago, and but he's a bit older than me, obviously, but he's a real I love the guy. He's incredible, and listening to him, you know, we've had a lot of conversations. He doesn't even really care about politics anymore. He doesn't even like talking about it, but I'm interested in it, you know, and I've asked him, you know, like how does this thing work, right? And he said to me when he was a party leader, right, it was a small party at the time, but probably one of the more conservative parties in New Zealand. Anyway, he said the limo or whatever would turn up at his house in the morning. He would go in it, and he wouldn't even really know what he was doing that day. He'll have a diary that's written by in his office, and then they'd be like, "Oh, what are we doing today? Oh, we're going to go speak at the where it is West Auckland Rotary Club. You're going to do that. Then we're going to go fly down to here, and you're going to have a meeting here, and then you're going to do something else and do something else. Cool." And that was the day. So even times when they'd say, "Oh, you know, now you're going to go and have a coffee with this MP here to get a photo, basically," and then there's been some sort of, you know, kerfuffle or whatever, but the bureaucrats that sit behind him, basically the politicians, which are just the figureheads of that party, the bureaucrats that actually run those guys were filling up their diaries and that they've already done the deal, right? You're just going there to take the photo. It's already been, don't worry about it. We've already done this. And it's the bureaucrats that have been in Parliament for 40, 50 years. You know, these are the ones that you don't see, right? So they're the ones actually running the country. The people that are in there elected are just really just the figureheads and just the talking head for however long they stay in there until they get rolled, and then the next guy goes in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like just all a big show, you know? And like they have like the fancy buildings and they wear the fancy clothes to make it look legitimate. You know, it's the same with like even just like all the language, you know, you read like even like to get visas. Like I'm getting a visa right now to go to Peru. And it's like all the language, I'm like, I don't even understand what they're asking me, you know, but it's almost like they intentionally do that to be like, you're just not smart enough to like understand how it actually works. But in reality, it's just like this like cognitive dissonance that no one understands, and they're like, yeah, it's because like we're smart.
But you've got to create the system to validate whatever that thing is that you're doing. Like, I mean, I wouldn't relate it to visas, but there's so many, like, you know, vehicle registration, like all these little ways that you have to pay money for things that, why the fuck do I do that? Why do I have to, you know, we have, I don't know what you have in Australia, but we have like, you know, road user charges, which is what you pay on top of your diesel. Then we have registration, registered vehicle, then a warrant of fitness, you know, then you're paying your tax through your fuel is anyway. And so there's all these little slithers of money that's just going out of your pocket for what reason? And it escalates pretty much every year, um, which is we all know is driven by inflation. And sadly, most people don't even know it's happening. It's the boiling frog scenario, isn't it? Like you just sort of go, man, things getting expensive. It's crazy.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, even trying to explain to people like what purchasing power actually means, you know? Like without the foundation of Bitcoin, it's so hard to even interpret it. You're like, oh, my bank account hasn't changed. It's like, yes, but like everything else has doubled in price in the last 10 years.
And you know what the other thing is, bro? Like I've seen this recently because we went to Fiji last year, family holiday, and we hear that the economy is kind of depressed and people don't have money, but man, the planes were full of people, obviously, and you know, over Christmas and New Year and that, I was down south at my brother's place, and there's a lake there and that, and I swear to God, I've never seen as many boats and boat trailers and fancy trucks. I grew up in this town, right? And I was like, oh my God. So what I realized is that it's all fake. Again, it's all credit and debt, right? That's what the whole fiat money system is. It's credit and debt. So people just credit and debt. It's this illusion of wealth, but it's all fake. You've got some borrowing capacity, so therefore you can buy this vehicle and this boat, and then that sort of drives the economy somewhat, but it's all fake. You don't actually own, you know, some of those boats might be owned outright, but I'm fair to say most of them will be ticked up. There'll be loans on that stuff, easy to get, and that's the Ponzi, eh? That everyone's just living on this credit and debt type thing, and it's completely normal, and um, yeah, it's all fake.
And the idea of like inflation and deflation and like depreciating assets, like you have people taking out these big loans to buy like all their toys, and they're paying interest on that, and then it's also depreciating, and the only person that wins is the bank, and then you're just like left broke at the end you know and even like now I've been really sitting with like what an asset really means to me, and like the company that I'm working right now, there's like about to be the share release, and like I'm getting a chunk of equity, and it's coming with like the cliffs and the vesting and all of this, and I'm just sitting here thinking to myself like I actually kind of don't give a fuck. Like, yes, there might be an exit in however many years, but as an asset, like unless it's your business where like you have the power to sell at any time, like I'm just like working to get this little piece, but it's not liquid whatsoever, and I have no control over its liquidity either. And I would just way rather Bitcoin.
Hmm. I'm the same, mate, and I've always had a bit of a not dim view, but sort of I'm a bit sus about these equity shares sort of things in companies, because unless the thing is going to rip, I mean, obviously, you've got some that have turned out really well for the shareholders. But one thing I've learned about being in business for a while is that it's one thing to operate a business, it's another thing to actually make a profit in business. And then thirdly, like, what is the end game for a business? Like, I've got a construction company, right? I'm under no illusion that I don't think I'm ever going to be able to sell this business, right? It's just like my plan is that I want to bring my family into the business, right? I think that's the real key to generational wealth, is building something. I came from a family with no money basically and no business people. So I'm at the start, but I want to set it up to a point where my son and my daughter and whoever else is in my family can come in, and we can carry this thing on. And that's what wealthy families do. They build things, and we've been told this lie that, oh no, just go off into the world and find yourself and do all this sort of thing. Whereas my thinking now is that it should almost be part of our family. We should be trying to build things that we can pass on to our families, and build something that will benefit all of us in the future.
Yeah. Well, like what you're talking about there, it just like, it reminds me of like what the natives up in like North America saying. It's like, everything we do is for 7 generations ahead. Like who actually thinks like that these days?
We're not taught to. And, the elites, again, I always talk about the elites, that's what they do. Like nepotism, for example, which I don't agree with, is like, oh, l- hooking up your family or whatever it is. But that's kind of what I'm talking about. We should be building things. It should be expected in some ways. And it's not like that you can't go off and express yourself. Because I grew up, I would say, poor. We didn't need much because it was a different era. But you know, that's not what I want for my children. There's a better way, there's a better way to live life and have more control of your own life, and starting with a good financial foundation is key. And if we keep every generation you're starting now, by the time you start, bro, I didn't start my business till I was in my mid-30s because I always wanted to do business, but I had no like knowledge, no capital, no sort of hookups, if you like. I was just like floundering around, just trying to figure out how to do it. I had no skills, and now that I've been in business for just over 10 years now. I've got something that I can actually pass on to my family that make it a little bit easier for the next generation, and hopefully they'll go on and go on and go on, and um, you know, create something that'll actually be more beneficial to everyone rather than just everyone starting each generation.
Mhm. Yeah, man, 100%. 100%. I mean, I'm definitely in the same boat now where like I'm trying to work out how to make moves. Like I'm gonna have a baby hopefully at the start of next year. You know, I'm getting married in a couple months and then we're getting to baby making. And it's like things change. It's like I'm thinking about generations ahead now, you know?
Well, you just said before, mate, which really impressed me, that you've retired your partner. That's a freaking goal, bro. That's cool. To be able to do that and say that, because this is where we're at now in our relationship. I used to think, Nell and I, we've been together for nearly 15 years, I suppose. And when we first met, it was about like, we're just going to crush it and you're going to crush it. Cause, she had a good business going of her own right, and, we're deep in the matrix at the time and thought that's how it worked. You have your business and I'll have my business and we'll just keep rolling and crushing it. And the thought of her being a stay-at-home mom or having that was like, oh, that's not a flex. And now I completely see it a completely different way. And it is the ultimate flex if you can do that.
100%, man. 100%. And I think there's just so much of that, like that programming around like, women in the workforce and like they got to be boss bitch and all of this. And I just saw it like as soon as we kind of made that transition, it was just like we were both way happier.
Yeah, because you're assuming the roles. Like, this is like Marcus Aurelius calls it the logos. I don't know if you heard that term, which is, I think it means like in the natural order of things, right? When you make that decision, like you intrinsically have traits as a man, right? And even though fuck whatever society says, trying to tell you that you shouldn't think like that and be like that, bro, that's the way you're wired. And your partner, she's wired her way. Women have this nurturing ability that we don't have. There's things that you have that she doesn't have, and vice versa. And that's why God made us that way, right? This is why when you get a couple that's your ride or die, man, you guys are untouchable. Like, my wife gives me so much confidence to do things, and then it also, I want to protect her, and I want her to be able to nurture our children. Like, and it's a beautiful thing. Like, that motivates me to do my role, and I know that she gets her role, and then suddenly we're following God's plan, bro. We're in a tight family unit, and it's life is just so much better like that.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, man, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think we've just lost touch of that so much, And it took us a lot of like healing to get back to that, as well.
It's I mean, dude, you can get yourself freaking barbecued by saying this sort of stuff, but women and men have different attributes, and this idea that, and I grew up in that era, right? The feminist movement. So I've only ever known, I mean, and you're younger than me. So you've obviously been right in the thick of it as well. Whereas, I was brought up in the girls can do anything, like anything you can do, I can do better. Girls can crush it, competing with the men. And I actually feel sorry for those women now because I'm in my 40s, right? And I know women that have missed the boat, sadly, because they were hard up their career and wanted to, fuck knows, man. Like, what were you trying to do? I'm lucky. I'm lucky because I had kids late, right? I was in my early 40s when I first started having kids. But I know that that's not possible for some women. And I would hate to get to that time in your life where you realize, well, what was that all about? You know what I mean? Like working for this, what was I doing? But again, it's that whole psyop of, you can go out there and crush it. You can do whatever the men can do, but why? You're going to be so much better living the dream of raising a family. Man, there's no greater experience in life that I've ever had than raising children, bro. It's just, only those that do it and aspire to do it will ever understand.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, just how me and Emily's relationship is and our dynamic and how we plan for the future is so different than like even her brother, right? Like her brother, like they're both working. It's like they're taking all like the government handouts, paternity leave, maternity leave, all these complications. While she was pregnant, she was like trying to get a job so that she could apply for the right level of maternity leave. And like now they're both working and like someone else is raising their kid. And it's just like chaos, you know? It's chaos. Like I don't want anyone else raising my children.
Nah, who's going to teach your child better than you? Hey, this is another thing, part of that psyop, and we went through that with this whole homeschooling thing. And bro, just to give you an example, right? Like our son went to school for a year because he wanted to, and we didn't want him to not go because he did the thing, and he couldn't read, right? And I was okay with that because just whatever, I know he's going to read at some point. And it's like developmentally very, I wouldn't say he's behind, he just wasn't learning anything. I could see that. Once he did homeschooling, I'm going to tell you, bro, it was like 5 days and the dude was reading, not reading Shakespeare or anything like that, but he's reading because he'd had that one-on-one and they'd actually spent the time, you know, that was the first week of homeschooling. So, it's just things like, for example, they're doing projects, right? And last week or the other week they did this thing on bees, basically, and they went through and learned this, and it was quite interesting. I was even learning some stuff about bees, and he's right into like he loves Ferraris and Lamborghinis, like just a kid loves like cars. Oh, that's a Lamborghini. Oh, that's so cool. And I said to Nell, I said, why don't you do next project's going to be Ferrari or Lamborghini or something like that, And we haven't told him yet because he won't finish the one that he's doing, but bro, he's going to be frothing because now he's learning about Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Like, there's lots to learn, and we can just choose that. You know what I mean? We're not dictated. I don't know what they're learning at school, but it won't be the history of Ferrari or who's into, so something that he's actually interested in and wants to learn. It's a no-brainer.
And I mean, like, my plan is absolutely to homeschool now, from everything that I know. And when I was like 23, I was with Emily in Canada, in northern BC. And we went out to this lake, like way out. It was 3 hours down a dirt road, like out on the reservations. And we got a flat tire and we ended up just pulling into this driveway to just kind of get a bit of assistance. And we rock up there, and then the owners come out and they're a German couple, and they've just been living out on this reservation, like basically completely disconnected from the world for like 20 years. And they had a kid, and I met this kid, you know, and socially he was a little bit, not quite into the nuance of conversation, but like he was brilliant, like he had access to the internet, no school, like they didn't follow any program, nothing. And he's 17 at the time. He'd built himself a business doing web development that he was like making an income from. And then when he wasn't working on his own business, he was touring around Canada at festivals doing like magician gigs, right? And although yes, there was like a little bit of social kind of not quite rightness by like having basically zero contact with the outside world, like he was brilliant, like truly brilliant, you know, in the way he thought and super unique. And I realized then, like, oh, just because like the government has said like this is how schooling is or this is how it should happen, it's like the human spirit is just so curious, you know, and it'll just follow its passions and its curiosity until the end of days. And that's where all the learning happens, you know. And then like for me in my business that I like, you know, how I make my income now, I went to high school and I went to university and I did all of it, and everything I do now I told myself on YouTube, you know. And it's like, it's all there. And then it also just opens up to that greater thought, you know, of like, and we say you should give birth in hospitals because that's where, you know, babies are made. And it's like, well, I mean, since the beginning of time, that was like actually not what we did, you know? And like just all these ideas started to turn in my head. And it's like, it makes me think of this reel that I saw on Instagram one time. And it's this comedian, he's an Indian guy, but he's pretending to be a guru. And he's like, everyone fucks up their kids. So fuck them up in unique and interesting ways. You know? And it's like, okay, I'm in.
Dude, the amount of homeschool kids that I've met, they're different. You know, they're super well adjusted. They don't have hang-ups with speaking to adults generally. Like, I mean, I know old mate sounded a little bit like Rain Man, but that's different. So, and then you start learning about people that people that have achieved this insane success in whatever chosen field. It's not unusual that they would have been homeschooled, eh? It's we there's a so I like practicing jujitsu, right? It's one of the things I just like to do. It's kind of fun. Anyway, we had a seminar. I attend the odd seminar, and there's a young guy called Cole Abate, and he's like one of the top in the world. In fact, I think he is world champ. I mean, he has been throughout his whole career. He was a phenom when he was like 8, I want to say. You know, he was this just looked like a boy, and he was a freak at that age. He came and did a seminar with us, and just people were chatting to him or whatever. Dude was like 19 at the time, and mate, he's so articulate. He was just seminar with a room full of 40 odd people, just no dramas. And then I can't remember how the question came up, but basically he said, "Oh, I was homeschooled." And as soon as he said, I was like, "Of course you were." And it was interesting. He said, he told his parent, he's a bit different, like he's a smart guy. He said, "I want to be homeschooled." And they said, "Oh, well, you need to sell it to us." And he'd come up with this whole plan and everything, how he was going to do it. But what was interesting, they said, "Oh, what about your friends and that?" And he said, "Oh, I always just considered the guys in my gym my mates. You know, I never saw age as a," he said, "Oh, all the guys I used to train with, you know, they were just my friends. There was never any sort of worrying about what age I was." And I just thought it was so cool. You know, he's such a talented guy. And I've met so many homeschool kids that are sort of the same. Um, so there's all of that as well.
Hmm. I mean, I think, you know, my default is always whatever the fucking modern world's got going on now, this is all just like a big game for the last 100 years that we're like experimenting with. And what happened from 100 years ago back is like more closely related to the truth, you know, of the human experience. And like, it's not like you're in a tribal setting and like everyone has a kid at the same age and like they only hang out with the people who are the same age as them.
Well, I don't know if it was what it was like for you, but school was stress. You know what I mean? And I was probably one of the popular kids, I suppose. But even so, it was still stress. You know, you don't know anything about anything. You're trying to there's class clowns. You know, there's always a tension brewing between different factions. There's bullying. There's you know you get bullied if you're too smart, you get bullied if you're too dumb, you get bullied if you're fat, if you got ginger hair. It's not a harmonious experience. And then, like, for me, because I never liked school, so I was always at war with the teachers, right? I never liked authority. So, add that into the mix as well. So, you tell me to do something, well, now I can't do it. I'm not saying that's a good thing. That's just the way I am. So, when you factor all that in, like, what was I even doing there? What did I actually get from being at school? And when you actually talk to most people, you mention you're homeschooling your kids and how are they going to get socialized and all of these sorts of things. And then it always ends up being, yeah, I hated school. I didn't like it. It was garbage. So it's a part of a scam, brother. It's another one of those. I mean, I guess if you play devil's advocate and there's education, then to educate a lot of people, you have to come up with this sort of curriculum or whatever, and they need to sort of learn the basics. But see, even that's been hijacked now. You won't know this probably, but all the gender stuff is deep from kindergarten age, right? And and all this over sexualization, that it's a fact, mate. It's in schools and it's being taught, for what reason? Like, no kid needs to learn this sort of stuff, as much as they're actually being taught. I saw a podcast. I don't know if you've seen that one. What are they called? He's an Australian fella. It's actually really interesting. But he was talking to a guy who was talking about these satanic pedophiles in the education system, and basically saying that out of the curriculum, and I'm not sure what ages is, might be 12. What's year 10? How old are you then?
Oh, you'd be like, what, 15 or something like that?
Okay. But anyway, there's this curriculum about the sex or this health education or whatever. I think it was over 30% of the curriculum was sexual stuff. We're talking about stuff like anal sex and blowjobs and all this sort of garbage. Like, why is that in the education system? So there's so many reasons to not be at school, bro.
No, man, I couldn't agree more. All right, so this podcast is the Where Bitcoin Meets Ayahuasca podcast.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, nice. We could just pivot a little bit into some other rabbit holes. I'd love to hear about like how you came to the medicine and like some of your experiences and how you've changed and your relationship to consciousness and all of these things through that process.
Bro, I get emotional every time I talk about this, but in fact, I should say that, when you talked about Bitcoin and, what brought me to that, like, ayahuasca was actually a big part of my awakening. And I know you'll understand that. So a buddy of mine, actually, who was training to be a shaman, and we ended up ultimately as business partners. He was training in Peru, and I can't remember whether it was his third trip to the jungle. He went out there for 3 months, and he was working for me at the time, actually. He was a builder as well. And we did jiu-jitsu together. So that's how we met, basically. And I'd always been interested in ayahuasca. Well, I shouldn't say always, but for a while I thought, I'd love to do that. I'd taken a lot of recreational drugs as a young person, like lots of psychedelics, and and I know my relationship with psychedelics is completely different now, right? It used to be a way to just get fucked up with your mates, right? Completely, totally wrong context and just bad, basically, and all the recreational drugs and that come along with it. But anyway, ayahuasca was something that I was very interested in, but obviously being in New Zealand, we are nowhere near the jungle. And so I thought I just put it on the bucket list, you know what I mean? And then, so anyway, my buddy and I, he was like, I'm away for 3 months. Oh, yeah, where are you going? Oh, Peru. Oh, real? Do you know much about ayahuasca? Oh, funnily enough, I'm actually going out there because I'm training to be a shaman. So he went out there, I think he was there for 3 months. He came back, he said, nah, bro, I'm not doing it because I can't handle it, basically. The training was too much. And I was like, oh, man, if I'd love to do it, basically. And he said, Bianca, so that's his friend. She is a shaman, so they did some training together. She's actually from Sydney as well. But anyway, one day out of the blue, he just rang me, says, oh, bro, I've got Bianca. She's coming over, to do some ceremonies. Are you keen? And mate, my initial, I was like, oh, whoa, yeah, I mean, yeah. whoa, yeah, I'll call you back, you know. For some reason, I just freaked out, you know, and then I just took 5 minutes. I rang back and said, yeah, man, I'm in. So anyway, she came. We got a space like south of Queenstown. I was on basically a retreat. So sort of had a sweat lodge and some, you know, tents and stuff like this out there. And we did a ceremony. There was probably 15 of us, I think. There's only 3 people that had drunk medicine before. So we're all pretty new. We all kind of knew each other. We're all sort of connected in some ways. And yeah, the first ceremony, bro, like none of us knew what to expect. So we're all very anxious. And I think so Bianca was running the ceremony, and then my mate Luke they were sort of chummy, so and he's drunk hundreds of times, and another friend of ours had also drunk quite a bit of medicine. So there was that, because I think there was she was a bit worried. Basically, there was probably about 13 or 14 of us that never drunk ayahuasca before, so like, you know, what could this turn into, sort of thing. But as it happened, it was sweet. And yeah, so I did my first ceremony, and it did change my life, bro. Like, I'll have to say that straight out the gate. It was strange, man. Like, I drank, you know, we drank medicine. I was like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. And then my first ceremony was actually the most profound from my own personal level, because I think a lot of people think they're going to go dig into the deep dark, you know, back to their childhood or whatever, or some real dark sort of past. Whereas I never really had that. I had this thing where I was just sort of sitting there after about an hour or so. I just started seeing this image of Nell, like, you know, right in front of me. And I was like, oh, yeah, there's Nell. And I kept on trying to look past, you know, to see what was sort of behind, and it just didn't go anywhere. And I'm giving you the short version, obviously. And then eventually I started realizing, I started getting this message of like, this is your queen, and you're not respecting her, or you're not, you know, you're not treating her as such. And basically, like, you know, you're taking her for granted. And, you know, if you don't change your ways, or if you keep going on this way, then you could, the real possibility that you will lose her. And then I had this overwhelming feeling, bro, for most of the ceremony, of like, that she had left me, or that we had broken up, and that regret and pain of that, because I didn't realize how much I loved her, honestly, until I was confronted with that. And dude, I was just squirming. I was just like, oh man, oh no, like as if it had happened. You know, I was getting it so bad. And then so that was, you know, it still gives me goosebumps today. And then I've got a 18-year-old daughter, and she wasn't that old at the time. Obviously, she was maybe 12 or 13 or something. And so then it was like her image, and then, you know, I got to see her face, and then she just started crying, and it was things that I'd said to her in the past, you know, that hurt her feelings, and she was projecting that feeling back onto me, you know, and then I could feel it. And again, because the reason I'm telling you this is because these were all things that I'd never experienced before, right? This was just getting punched in the dick. The people that I love the most, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh my God. And then, of course, and then so we obviously got past that. But then the other part, I'm sure you've experienced this, where I saw my body as not me, if you know what I mean. Like, and then suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I love you. You know, the person that you see in the mirror, you just think that's you, but it's not you. It's the physical vehicle that you reside in this world. And so I just had this overwhelming love for myself. And that was kind of the 3 big takeaways from that first ceremony. And yeah, man, it was so deep. And then the next morning, because we did 2 ceremonies, but I just left that day, bro. I was like, I need to go. And I was probably 2 hours away from home. And I just got up early in the morning, jumped in my truck, and I just boosted home. And then Nell was there. She goes, oh, what are you doing here? And I just said, oh, I need to talk to you. And bro, I just like broke down in tears. She'd never seen me whew, she'd never see me like that ever. And I just apologized, and it was just too much, bro. It was, I mean, I still get emotional thinking about it now, but man, it was just, I'm sure you've had some similar experiences yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, me and Emily have drunk, I don't know, 50, 60 times together, and just like, man, clean up the relationship like every time. Like we fall short in so many ways, and it's so hard to see it, like your own blind spots. It's so hard to see. It's so much, you can see everyone else's faults, but like just to have that really clear mirror is like almost impossible. And that's like why the medicine is just so beautiful.
Oh, bro. And I just so badly want to go to South America because I haven't drunk now. So I've done 8 ceremonies, and I just, the last couple of ceremonies, I was like, oh, I'm not done. Like I know I needed to go to the jungle. Everyone's told me how much more powerful the experience is in the jungle and the medicine and everything. So, but the thing that's holding me back is my kids, right? I got 2 young kids, and the thought of leaving them here and going to South America on my own, which I would do if I don't have I just not prepared to do that right now. I don't want to leave them because every ceremony I've ever had, I've just needed to come home and be with my family, like just spend the day with them, and just, you know, it's that that idea that if you did something, like I said, if Nell had left me and then it was too late, it's like that waking up and getting that second opportunity, the one that they do in the movies, right? That you've lost your family, but you wake up, it was all a bad dream, and then they're there. It's that feeling, like this over appreciation of what you have, and this gratitude of the people that are in your life. It's just yeah, man, it's powerful stuff, eh?
Mm. Yeah, my teacher, he talks about like the 4 laws of a good life that the Incas carried. And the 4 laws are family, community, work, and ceremony. And they say, what's the most important, And everyone goes, family, right? But they actually go like, no, it's ceremony. Because like if you're no good, like in yourself, and like you can't see the love, and you're like full of anxieties and depressions, and you can't focus and all of this, like you're no good for anyone else. And like when we come to the medicine, it's like we get to look at all the places that we're falling short, and then just like you said, just go back with so much love, you know, like actually see the world for what it is, not like living in this like weird illusion of what we think it is.
All right, yeah, it's changed my life, massively. And everyone that I because Bianca started doing these regular trips, and she's been doing them for years now, and so many people have obviously just done ceremonies with her, and so many of them, bro, like have gone to South America now, or it like just changed their lives in so many ways. And even when you do a ceremony with people and you didn't think they got much out of it, they keep coming back because everyone's experience is individual, right? And even Nell, for example, like she had a full nutter first ceremony because she was like, it was 2 people in the ceremony with us, and they were just basically sitting there. When's this thing start? Just and and Nell was getting this, this Pachamama was saying, bro, you're not, I'm not. It's not a. This isn't a roller coaster. You know what I mean? Like you get this when you're ready, if you know what I mean. So, and I even had one with her where I I was just getting this, like the taste of ayahuasca was like so powerful in the morning, and I had to do this ceremony, and we were doing one together, and I was getting physically sick all day thinking about drinking the medicine, and it came to the ceremony that night, and I just went, I'm not going to drink, bro. Like I, if I think about this, I want to throw up, And I believe that the message was that I needed to be strong be there for Nell, as a support, as opposed to I was being basically told not to drink the medicine that day because I've never had that ever since. And as it happened, it was that was another power of the medicine that, you know what I mean? There's so much to it that um, is unexplainable and doesn't really make sense. But I believe that to be the message that day.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, the magic in its very nature is just irrational, you know? Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful work, man. And like meeting you guys at Bitcoin Vegas, like you meet a lot of cool Bitcoiners and you're like, oh yeah, like they're doing the Bitcoin thing. They're like actually really understand what's going on. They have like this extra layer of discernment around how to navigate life because they understand Bitcoin. But it was like when I met you and Nell, it was like immediately I was like, I see you. You know what I mean? Like I see the spirit in you. And then like obviously the conversation led to drinking ayahuasca and it was like, ah, there it is. It makes perfect sense.
As soon as you said you lived in South America, we're like, ooh, yeah. And it's real interesting, actually, bro. Like, so some Bitcoiners, I won't mention their names, but that are quite involved with some of the funding aspect of what Nell and that's up to. They're also drinkers as well, So they that came out because they've spent some time in South America and whatnot as well, and so of course that's like and of course they drink because you just know before like you say, you see each other, and it's just cool because anytime you talk to somebody that's drank medicine, there's a bit of a kindred sort of connection there. And the thing is, when you relate your stories, like I get emotional listening to other people's stories, bro, because I feel it. I know that they're not making this thing up or they're embellishing it. Like that is what they experienced, eh? And I don't know. I get real emotional about that, eh? Like my sister-in-law was having a experience with her mother, who I know. You know, yeah, just like there's just so many, yeah, cool experiences from family and things like that. So yeah, I can't wait to come to South America, dude. Probably come. Peru seems a bit out the gate for me, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah, it's cool, man, down there. It's scrappy. You kind of got to love the scrappy, but it's cool. And yeah, like the medicine out in the jungle, like they're no joke. They're out there drinking 300 nights a year. They're serious, serious.
That's mental. Because I think the most of it. No, I've only ever done two in a row. I think I've never done more than two in a row because it's just the way it's rolled. But yeah, I want to go to a retreat, man, and spend a good week or two or whatever it takes to really get into it and do some work. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm starting to get that calling again, eh?
Yeah, plants are wonderful teachers. And there's just so much noise in the world, just so much noise. Like you open up your phone, you turn the TV on, whatever it is, and it's just like bombarded with shit, you know? And like you're just out in nature and like just with the plants and everything's just so balanced.
I mean, it's that idea of raising your vibration, eh? Like, this idea that so social media, for example, this idea that that's where the energy farming and that comes from, right? Like you're giving your energy to this thing that's in here, like all the Trump stuff, the Epstein files, all the stuff that's not good. But why am I spending my energy like giving it to this low vibration, and being in that space when you're so right. Go outside, look at the sun, breathe in the fresh air, listen to the birds. Like we need to raise our vibration. So I'm real conscious of that now. Alcohol lowers your vibration. Everything lowers your vibration. People's energy. I can't be around people that have got negative thinking on any level. I just don't want to be around it. Not because I don't love them or I don't like these people. It's like, no, bro, I'm not coming. I'm not getting involved in this conversation. I can't be around you. Eh?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just start navigating life so differently, like once you're playing the consciousness game.
Hard out. And you feel it, man. I mean, so ayahuasca, another thing brought me to God. Like I'm a Christian now, so I believe in Jesus Christ. That's just my beliefs, and unwittingly, through drinking ayahuasca is what brought me to God. I was pretty much agnostic. I think I just didn't think that, or I wasn't an atheist. I just wasn't sure. Like I would call it the universe, you know what I mean? I wouldn't come out and say God. And then this is just my own, this is where I'm at with it. Like, I believe that God created the world, and I was at church once, just a local church here, and I'm quite friendly with the pastor in that here, and he said, he was handing out these leaves. It was in the middle of autumn, and he said, "I want you to look at this leaf and just ponder this leaf, right? And just look at it and just feel what Jesus is trying to tell you about this." And I'm like, "Oh, leaf, all right." The whole, we're sitting outside. Actually, it was a nice day, and I turn this leaf over, bro, and I start looking at this leaf, and I swear to God, man, I just started seeing it as a creation. Like, oh my God, look at this thing. And the more you looked at it, the deeper the detail. You started seeing how this thing was constructed, and how it works, and how on the face of it, that's where the sun and the photosynthesis, and then you realize that that leaf is part of millions of other leaves, and you know that leaf is insignificant, but it's actually very important because it supports the whole tree, and that we're effectively like a leaf, like we're sort of insignificant but important to God at the same time. And you realize that if someone created that as an artwork, you think, oh, this is the greatest art that's ever been created. But reality is God created that leaf. Like there could only be a creator. This thing didn't just happen by chance. This didn't just happen. There was nothing, and then we had a big bang, and then suddenly it was all there. Bro, that's just not good enough. Like you can see God everywhere. You just have to be prepared to see it. Look at it, and sit in nature and just ponder what it is. Like to your point before, like get off internet, sit there, do some breathing, and just look at the world that's around you, because it's right there in front of us, and we're all just head down in the matrix, you know, completely disconnected with nature, and that's sadly where the human race is these days.
Mm. Yeah, my best buddy, he came out to drink medicine with me in like June of last year, and then since like he's been going pretty hard. He's probably done like 60 ceremonies in the last year or so, and he just like the other day I was just talking to him, and he was like, "Man, like I'm just starting to realize like the world is actually perfect, and we just fucked it up." You know? It's so easy to be like, the world is fucked, but like the world is perfect, you know? Nature is just divine.
The world is, bro, you don't need to do anything to the world. The world just does its thing, right? Like it just, we garden, like, I don't, not personally, but we create gardens and things like this, and nature just, I mean, you live in the jungle, bro. You cannot curate that, man. That thing just does its thing, and it works perfectly.
Mm, yeah. I was living down in the jungle for 3 months working with jaguars, and I'd like go and cut these trails so that I could like take them out on like the hikes through the jungle, and just like the sheer intensity of the life down there is almost overwhelming. Where I would go and get a machete and I'd like cut these trails. They're like 10 kilometers long, so I could take the animals out. And within 3 days, the jungle would just consume the trails. It's just like, what the fuck, man? It's so intense.
That's why they don't have roads, right, through the Amazon, right? They just can't be done, I think. Is that what that
Yeah, for sure. It's insanity, you know? It's insanity, man. And like, there's like Iquitos, which is like the biggest city not accessible by road, and it's out in the middle of the Amazon, you know? You can't drive there.
that's where all the, is that where all the retreats are, at Kitos?
Yeah, yeah. They're kind of usually like in Iquitos or Pucallpa, which is like a little bit further south.
Bro, that looks so hardcore to me. My mate was telling me about it, so I looked it up online, and there's like vultures and freaking, I'm just like, whoa, that place looks gnarly.
It is. It is gnarly. It's amazing though, but it's gnarly, you know?
Yeah, I want to go.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man.
So where will you base yourself? Like, Where will you be
I'm
based?
gonna be based in the Sacred Valley. So, like, I'm, like, up in the Andes, like, I'll be living at 3,000 something meters above sea level. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, like, the air is thin up there, and, like, it takes, like, 3 weeks to acclimatize. But I really had this calling to just, like, go live in Peru and just kinda switch it up from living in Costa Rica, and it's so cheap there, but the jungle is, like, amazing because obviously, like, the medicine's really close, but it's just so intense, and it's so hot, you know? And, the Sacred Valley is, like, 20 every day all year round, and then, like, at night, it's, like, fluctuates between, like, 10 and 0. It's kinda like a high desert, but where I'm living, it's only, like, 1 degree further away from the equator than I am here. And, like, I'm in the jungle, so it's like it's tropical. It's just super high altitude.
That's mad. And so what was the reason for going there? Like, why do you choose there?
I mean, I think there's, like, a fair size, like, expat community, so there's, like, people around, um, and yeah, like, the culture is cool there where like 50, like you go to the market, right, on a Saturday, like the farmers market, and 50% of the people are still talking Quechua, right? They're not even speaking Spanish. So like there's like really deep indigenous roots, and like the Andes like have their culture, and it like hasn't been totally like captured and conquered yet, even with 500 years of like Spanish influence. Whereas like you go to like the capital city, it's like it's very Spanish. So it was kind of like a perfect midpoint where it's like still very deep roots and like beautiful traditions and a beautiful culture that's still like somewhat intact. But the weather's also pretty good.
Do you think you would train to be a shaman, or is that something you're keen on? Or
I mean, we'll see. You know, it's a long, arduous, difficult path, but like from my perspective, there's not really like a greater path that you can walk in this life than like learning to do that. But I'm also young. I'm like only 28 years old, so like I'm gonna just continue taking kind of steps slowly towards it. But once you really start, it's like 10 years of like serious apprenticeship.
right. I mean, speaking to the shaman that I know, like I feel like it's I almost feel like you don't get a choice, eh? That's what I'm thinking. I don't know if I'm right or not wrong, but it's like the shaman that I know, it's like she is, I could be wrong, but I feel like it just drags her back in. You know what I mean? It's like life, like, um, yeah, I just, I wouldn't want to talk about her like private life, but I feel as though my observation is that it's just you get dragged into it, like you might have some money and then it goes, so then you're back into it. You're unlucky in love or whatever it is, like all these circumstances that kind of keep bringing you back to that. And then I don't even think that, man, I've had so many profound experiences, and I'm like, what you do is just incredible, but I don't think she sees it. I've never met any other shaman. I don't know if they feel the same way, or whether they're kind of just, once you get selected, you don't really have a choice. You'll get rewarded and maybe in the next life. I'm not sure, but it seems like a pretty brutal vocation, eh?
Oh, dude, it's so brutal. Like I can't think of a more difficult path to walk in this life either. And it scares me, but I just feel like I don't know, I'm just kind of like meant to walk this path. So like I gotta see it through.
Because it's the for me, it's like the diet in that, and so a couple of the ceremonies that I did, I didn't take the diet very serious, and they were not very good ceremonies actually. And so I'm like, oh, okay, you've got to do it properly. You've got to dedicate yourself. That's part of the least you can do is sort of prepare yourself right. Hey, you can't just rock up on the day and go, oh, let's go. So again, obviously very limited experience, but that's one thing I think I've learned from my experience is that it's no joke, and you need to prepare accordingly, and respect it. I feel that.
You gotta love it, you know? You have to love it. And
I'm getting a calling, bro. Like I'm telling you, in the last sort of year, I suppose I've just like, yeah, I'll be down, and I've actually changed so much as a person since my last ceremony. Because it's a journey, right? And I was telling you before we went on air, like everything's fake, everything, and I see it as that. And once you wake up to it, you can't unsee, what now, right? Like governments are fake, the money system's fake, the pharmaceutical industry's fake, the food industry's fake, the education system's fake. Everyone at the top level is connected in some sort of weird way. Where we're chasing these dreams, if you like, for what purpose? Like these careers and things like that don't actually mean anything, bro. Like you talk to someone who's got a high stress job, and all they're doing is, oh my God, this, that, and the other. I'm like, bro, what do you care? Like you could die today, no one will give a fuck. Your job will be up for on seek within a week. You know what I mean? Why do you care? And you have to wake up to this, like, this is the thing, like this NPC behavior. Like you're either, this is the thing, like, conspiracy theorists, right? Like if you're not a conspiracy theorist now, are you even a real person?
yeah, totally.
Bro, man, like, are you even freaking a real person, or are you just some drone, like some sort of clone? Because you can't live in this world. It's not acceptable, like, I love that scene in The Matrix, where he's eating that steak. He goes, I know the steak isn't real, but I don't want to remember anything. And it can be quite confronting at times, and it gets quite overwhelming. But I want to know. I want to seek truth. I want to learn more. I'm up for it. You know what I mean? It does get pretty dark at times, but I don't want to fucking live the way I did before, where I was completely oblivious to the real world, and I was, thinking I was being a good little worker bee, I suppose, a slave, just sort of existing. And I see that in the church as well. Like I haven't been a Christian that long, but my relationship with Jesus is quite different. I don't necessarily like church, and I was attending church for a while, but then I started realizing, like, bro, half these people are asleep. Then they're just doing it because that's what they believe is what's required to be a good Christian. Whereas I believe that to have a relationship with Jesus, it's you do that in solitude. You do that. It's my relationship with Him, and I don't need to be part of a congregation to do that. My relationship with God is personal, and I want to develop that relationship, but I'm not going to do it through a church. Really, that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. My teacher's teacher down in the jungle, he's like big deal, he's like the Dumbledore, the Yoda of ayahuasca down in the jungle. And he while like my teacher was apprenticing with him, he was always like, no Bible, no Jesus, no none of that, because like, the Spanish came in so heavy, like all through South America, and he was like trying to maintain his indigenous roots and not take in like the the ideas of what spirit's meant to be, you know? And then like, 15 years ago, so he's like, 65 at this point, and Jesus comes to him in ceremony, and they like sit down and they like talk for a few hours, and then now he just like walks around with this giant stainless steel cross, and it's like he found his way to it. It had nothing to do with the book. It had nothing to do with like a religion or a congregation or anything like that. It was like he just found that what that means, that heart.
100%. And that's kind of that's what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't need to be taught in a church, and I could be completely wrong. I don't think I am, because again, it's my personal relationship. And that's I had a similar experience. What I considered was, so I used to own this other business, which was a float therapy place, and we would do ketamine floats, which is that if you ever get the opportunity, try that, man, because that is some you're talking to God when you're doing that. That's for sure. And so I would do those on occasion, um, and had some pretty profound experiences. You know, talking to God and healing your body and things like this is like pretty wild, and a lot different to plant medicine. Same with mushrooms as well. Like I sort of dabble in those from time to time. Um, but yes, I think ayahuasca or plant medicine is definitely in a league of its own.
Hmm. Yeah, ayahuasca's like top of the totem pole. You know.
100%, bro. It's yeah. I'm actually you actually getting me excited now. I need to. Well, not excited. I don't know if that's the real world. It's like the calling's getting stronger.
And like, for me, like I go through phases of like, really kind of intense work with the medicine. And then like I back off and then I like reevaluate and make changes in my life and all of this. And, it's nice to just go back every now and then and just get the next set of orders, the next to do list of what needs to be done to like live a good life.
Yeah, it's I mean, I'm yeah. As I said, I can't speak highly enough about it. The experience of it. I've never experienced my own death. I know people have had that in ceremony. I'm not sure if you have, but that's not something I'm looking forward to experience. But I'm told that.
Yeah, no, of course.
Well, that's the thing about ayahuasca, eh? Like, it's not. I just tell people like this isn't fun, bro. This isn't like a weekend with the boys. Like, this is serious shit, and it's yeah, it's nasty. I feel in some, but I mean, it's it. You know, what's the it? It's just essential. I think.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, there's just so much to come to terms with, and there's so much healing to do. There's so many like invisible leashes that are pulling us all around the place and putting us in weird situations because we're just like running on autopilot. And like to me, that's what it's all about. It's just about like accessing more free will, less like control, in my own consciousness.
100%. Because I feel that we're in society, and is that we're dumbing down like our I don't know what you want to call it, like our consciousness, I guess. Where most people are not even don't even realize that we have a conscience, like really, that we can raise our vibration, and you feel it in a room, bro. Like you walk into a room and it could be it's on, it's electric. You feel that we are, and then you can walk into a real dark environment as well, and you can sense it. You don't even we're not even taught that stuff. It's just in us, and sadly, we're not taught to. I believe that I've got so much to learn to I don't even meditate. It's something that I've always thought I want to learn about, but I haven't actually done the work. I've tried to meditate, and I just, oh man, my mind is to focus. It's do you meditate?
I mean, not like consistently. I've gone through phases. Um, But I mean, like the real goal is like to make life the meditation. Like what's the point of having a practice where you like sit on a mat to like get a line and then you stand up and then you go back to life and you just flailing around, you know? Like life happens in action.
It certainly does, eh?
Hmm. Yeah, cool. I mean, maybe the last thing I just want to touch on, just out of interest, is like I'm obsessed with indigenous cultures. As someone who's part Maori, I wonder how that's influenced your like perspective on life.
Yeah, look, I had a bit of a strange one. So my biological father was and my mother were real young, and so I never really knew him. Um, and so even though I've been part of you know, um, the culture, I suppose I wasn't raised that way. So I grew up in the South Island of New Zealand, right? So right at the bottom, and then my father and my whakapapa is what it's called, is from the top of the North Island. So I've been there a couple of times, but I don't have a big knowledge of my ancestry when it comes to that. And when I was about 18, I suppose I went through a real identity crisis because I wanted to know more about this culture or who I was and where I came from. And, I did study that for a couple of years and learnt more of the language and all the rest of it. But again, it's, you know, a lot of what I see with Indigenous cultures around the world, and you may think this from Australia, we're going through the same thing where it's actually a tool for dividing the country. We've got a real divisive. So we've got a race-based party in politics, Te Party Māori, and they're just radicals, and they're just telling everyone that they should feel aggrieved and um, you know that we should be angry at the white man. And I don't know, I see that in other parts of the world as well, which isn't helpful because there is a lot of great things about Māori people and their culture, and our culture, if you like. But it's I don't know, it's not being used for good, and that there's a lot of division being created in the country. Um, and I don't think it's a good thing for the country, if you like, just trying to put people in different camps. Um, but to answer your question, like I don't. It's there's a I think it's one of Bob Marley's albums. I always remember it because, and on the back cover, I don't know if it's Positive Rastaman Vibration or whatever it's called, Positive Vibration, where he says a man without any knowledge of his past or his family is like a tree without roots. And I've always felt like that, bro, because I've never really had that deep connection to my family. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask.
I mean, like we're all going through it. You know what I mean? I have no idea what my ancestors were doing. No idea. You know.
Well, I tell you what, so like on my mother's side, we never had like Anzac is a good example. I never had much of a connection to Anzac Day because, in my knowledge, we never had any family that fought in the war. And I only learnt maybe 10 years ago that I had a lot of family, like great uncles, and, that actually fought in the Second World War and, were lost over there and whatnot. And man, it's given me a sense of pride. I don't advocate for war on any level, but to know that I had, blood family that fought in those wars, effectively gave their life uh, to the Rothschilds, motherfuckers. That's a real sad thing, but it makes me feel proud that I had family that went there and uh, died sadly.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I definitely had some family who are out that way. But yeah, I mean, like, I try to like kind of find my ancestry, and I'm like sixth generation white Australian on my dad's side and fifth on my mom's. And it's like, I got no idea.
But this is the thing, bro. Like you've been taught, like we've been told now that you shouldn't feel proud of that, of your whiteness, and it's so bad, man. Like we should, you know, I don't, because I believe that history is a lie as well. That's probably for a whole nother episode. Like, and it's easy, bro. It's exactly right. It's so easy to actually see the fakeness in our history. Um, and so for some one race, like to then want reparations from something that they didn't live through, that you didn't actually do, but somehow need to pay it. It's not helpful, bro. Like none of this idea of that living in the past and someone must pay or something like that. I don't know if my family, my ancestors were fucked over by Captain Cook or whoever. I don't know that. And as sad as that is, I'm not hung up on that. I don't want to be, I don't know, given any sort of reparations, or I feel like I'm hard done by or anything like that. I'm just focused on me and my family and what's ahead of us, not what's behind me. It's not helpful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, to a brighter future.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Ricky, for talking to me. You have a podcast potentially coming out.
Yep. I'm just sort of we'll chat for sure because I want to get you on there, bro. Because yeah, man. I mean, the catalyst was Bitcoin because I always wanted to be involved in Bitcoin. I'm not a computer scientist. I'm not a finance guru, but I just think in order to push the awareness out there, everyone. I mean, I was like, what can I do? And I was, okay, I can buy some podcasting equipment and talk to some interesting people. And that is sort of still the plan. It's just I got a lot of other things going on as well.
Yeah, piece by piece. I mean, I was talking about getting this thing started for like 3 years. So
The coolest thing, bro, that I've learned, is that you just get to talk to good people for a good couple of hours or however long, an hour or whatever. And, you know, my people or our people, you know what I mean? It's, and how cool is it that we've got technology that allows us to do it, right? You're literally on the other side of the world yesterday and we can do this in real time. That's the real cool things about technology that we have today.
yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Makes the world feel small.
Yeah.
Unreal. Okay. I think that's all I got.
That's good to talk to you, man.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Another one in the bank. All my relations. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed the show. If you did enjoy the show, don't forget to like and subscribe below. It really helps a growing channel like this out. And click up here. It'll take you to a collection of the best this podcast has to offer.